Starting in verse 4. While a large crowd was gathering and people were coming to Jesus from town after town, he told this parable. A farmer went out to sow his seed, and he was scattering the seed. Some fell along the path. It was trampled on, and the birds ate it. Some fell along rocky ground, and when it came up, the plants withered because they had no moisture. Other seed fell among thorns, which grew up with it and choked the plants. Still, other seed fell on good soil. It came up and yielded a crop 100 times more than what was sown. His disciples asked him what this parable meant. And then down in verse 11, he begins answering this. This is the meaning of the parable. The seed is the word of God. That's real important. What if you want to be growing, you want to be producing fruit, we stay in that garden metaphor, that growing metaphor. What's the seed? How do I get started with an avocado tree? The seed of an avocado. How do I get started with tomatoes? You need some tomato seeds or a plant starter, right? And so the same thing, where do you begin? It's in the Word. You got to be there first. That's the seed. I don't care how great your soil is. I don't care how much you water it. I don't care how much I move my black pot in and out of the sun with the perfect ratio depending on the summer, winter, etc., etc. If there's not a seed in there, nothing is going to grow, right? So you got to start with the seed when you talk about the growth. Seed is the Word of God. Verse 12. Those along the path are the ones who hear, and then the devil comes and takes away the word from their hearts, so that they may not believe and be saved. Those on the rocky ground are the ones who receive the word with joy when they hear it, but they have no root. They believe for a while, but in the time of testing they fall away. The seed that fell among thorns stands for those who hear, but as they go on their way, they are choked by life's worries, riches, and pleasures. They do not mature. There's that word again, growth, maturity. But the seed on good soil stands for those with a noble and good heart who hear the word, retain it, and by persevering, that's going to be important later, by persevering, produce a crop. Okay? Okay, David, I get it. It's about growing. I plant the seed, I don't tend it, I don't tend the garden, it won't grow. I get that. But what in the world does maturity look like? Let's go to Ephesians chapter 4. What is maturity? You know, I have never met, not one time, not one single person who thought they were immature. Every time, whether it's in marriage counseling, parental counseling, with friends or family, I've not once had an issue with someone. The problem said, well, the problem is I'm immature. Everyone thinks that we're mature, and what we have to be careful with is what are we comparing that against? I had an elder tell me one time that it was a bit like a scrimmage, an inter-team scrimmage, where you get the UH offense playing the UH defense. What college is going to win? UH. And so if we're not careful, it's sort of like scrimmaging. You don't know how good you are because you're playing against yourself. Well, I am mature. If you think this is immature, you should have seen me 2 years ago. It's relative to ourselves, right? So what we have to do is we have to look outside of ourselves, someone a bit brighter, and a bit more wisdom to tell us, what does maturity look like? What's the measuring stick? Verse 1 of Ephesians chapter 4. We're going to go quickly, so hang on with me. As a prisoner of the Lord, then, I urge you to live a life worthy of the call. That's partly what's describing maturity, okay? You've been called a Christian. You're called a Jesus follower. Now, live a life, let your behavior be in line with that. Verse 2, this is what it looks like. Be completely humble and gentle. Be patient, bearing with one another in love. So it's humble, it's gentle, it's patient, it's loving. Make every effort to keep the unity of the Spirit. It's unifying. How are you going to know whenever you're mature? There's great unity in your relationships through the bond of peace. There's just word after word after word, and I want you to see, and what I'm hoping is that God speaks to you saying, okay, wow, there's the one I need to be working on. Now, I also hope He convicts you saying, wow, God's done that in me. Isn't He so great? whenever that pops up as we read through the list as well, stop and just enjoy that a little bit, okay? But also, we want to be convicted about where's the next step to grow. Always be growing, not stagnant. Jump down to verse 11. So Christ himself gave the apostles, the prophets, the evangelists, the pastors, and teachers to equip his people for works of service. So he kind of gives these titles, right? Prophet, pastor, evangelist, teacher. There was an Nancy at the Y the other day, and I was procrastinating going up to get on the machine, so I was like flipping through the magazines down in the lobby, you know, hoping that Jesus would come back before I actually had to go up and start. He didn't, so I had to get up there. And she, you know, she knows my role and things like that, and actually someone who's visited here once. And she came up to me and said, you may not remember me, but I visited, said, I'm not sure how to address you. And I knew what she meant, you know. And so I'll admit, probably because I was trying to procrastinate, but I was thinking, you know, like, all the different titles. I had a little fun with that, just internally, okay, didn't make it, I had a bad attitude, but didn't find its way to action, you know, sometimes that's the saving grace. And I thought of different titles, you know, it's like,